Wyatt smiled as the simulation ended in a successful run. Disconnecting from the training chamber, he cracked his neck with a satisfying pop. Following quickly exiting the chamber, his squadmates followed suit as he'd come to expect. Nar and Leopold immediately moved closer to compliment each other. Rackwell sent him an almost friendly nod. Seeing the usually stern-looking and serious woman without her perpetual frown was a bit jarring. Gregor, as usual, maintained a respectful introspective silence, but he could see that he too was pleased by the results of their training run. Clearing his throat, he gained their attention and addressed them. "Excellent work, everyone. We didn't suffer a single casualty this time. Tomorrow, Rackwell, you'll take point while Nar and I act as bait. Gregor, Leopold, you'll provide support. Understood." "Sir," the composters replied in unison. Wyatt saluted, and they returned it in kind. It pleased him greatly that they were no longer apprehensive about switching roles and practicing different approach vectors. The day after the ceremony, regular activity aboard the Nor Avio returned to near normality. He'd insisted on exchanging the leadership position of his squadron during simulations to see how they would fare in such a role. They protested, Gregor in particular, but it didn't last long before they accepted his decision. It allowed him to discover certain traits of his squadmates that he previously failed to see. Leopold excelled in support actions and in evading enemy fire, but he made for a surprisingly flexible leader if an insecure one, a position he could relate to. Nar's more reckless and near-suicidal tactics had lessened in intensity but still held the same deadly edge and attention-seeking results. Rackwell's aggressive tendencies remained, but now they were focused instead of being the product of glory-seeking. And most surprising of all, she was a fairly good leader, if not very versatile. Finally, Gregor's inflexible and unimaginative tendencies remained intact, but his aversion toward ambushes and other underhanded tactics had diminished significantly, and in an ironic way, he discovered he had a great affinity for them. Just as he was about to dismiss them, Gregor stepped up. "Sir, a moment of your time," Gregor asked, lowering his salute a second after Wyatt did so. "Is something the matter, Gregor?" Wyatt replied, seeing the seriousness in the rotund man's eyes. Gregor waited for a moment as the rest of the composters formed up, listening intently. He then glanced at Leopold for a second or two before turning to Wyatt again. "Sir, may I ask, will Leopold receive a knightly title in the near future?" Leopold barked out a laugh and placed a hand on Gregor's shoulder. "Ha, good one, Gregor, me a knight, a nobleman, and I thought you were a humorless ass." "I'm with Leo on this one, Gregor," Nar added, crossing his arms and raising an eyebrow in confusion. "You never said anything about that before. In fact, didn't you say that you'd quit drinking the day Leopold became a noble?" Wyatt winced a little as painful memories of a hangover came to him. His implants prevented him from getting lethally intoxicated, but it didn't stop him from getting drunk, as he found out not too long ago. A trip to Higo that was meant to be for diplomatic reasons and an excuse to unwind and celebrate somehow ended up with Javier Wund captured. After experiencing the consequence of reckless drinking, he swore never to get drunk again. Shaking away the momentary distraction, he focused his attention back on his squadmates. "I jest not," Gregor replied, his expression lacking the reserved playfulness or the sly smirk he wore whenever making a joking remark, usually at the expense of the brown-haired commoner pilot. "It is a legitimate concern, and given the course of recent events, I thought it'd be prudent to ask, sir." "You're serious?" Leopold muttered, losing his smile and stepping back. "Gregor, what in the bloody hell are you talking about?" "Great, just another thing I have to learn about being a blue blood," Wyatt thought as he crossed his arms, careful not to show his mild irritation. "I share Leopold's confusion, Gregor. Care to explain?" "I believe I know what Un's worry is," Rackwell said. Eyes turning to her, she continued, "We're an elite squadron, Wyatt, a named one at that, yet one of our members is a commoner. You could be pressured into making arrangements. That is to say, remove Leopold from his position and have some high-ranking officer within a powerful house with enough sway to assign someone of their choosing as his replacement." Her eyes landed on the puzzled Leopold for a moment before continuing. "It would be unbecoming of a squadron responsible for leading great victories, among them the defeat of a lone wolf, to have a commoner squad member." "Damn it, you're right," Nar agreed with a displeased expression. "Precisely," Gregor nodded. "However, if Leopold were to receive a knighting title or be knighted by a worthy noble, then such a threat would be less likely to occur." Wyatt hummed deep in thought. "I would like to avoid that from happening. We've gotten better as a team and we can improve further." "Don't I get a say in any of this? What if I don't want to be a blue blood, eh?" Leopold asked with a cocky grin. "Dear, please be serious for once," Gregor pleaded. "As insufferable as you are, and as much as I would be overjoyed not to have to listen to your uneducated quips, I will not sacrifice the cohesion of our squadron if I can help it. It pains me to admit this, but your skill as a fighter pilot is great. Finding someone capable of replacing you would only bring about dysfunction and prove to be time-consuming, he finished with a tiny smirk. You should be thankful we're trying to keep you around instead of replacing you and be done with it, for all our sakes. Listen to them, boss, blue bloods dictating the lives of commoners. But hey, what else is new? Leopold countered, never losing his smile. Though if me being part of the composters will get you in trouble, then just switch me up, boss. I promise I won't be mad. It can't be that hard, right? Commander Redford will be able to find someone suitable to cover my space, that I'm sure. The scarred man shrugged. The dream was nice while it lasted, and I got 2 medals and commendations out of it. I'm not going empty-handed, Leopold chuckled with humor, but Wyatt was able to see right through his facade of humor. Eyes narrowing, he turned to Gregor. Would that happen even if the princesses in charge of the Nor Navio were not operating entirely within the Royal Navy structure? Gregor looked pensive for several seconds before replying, It might not come to pass, sir, but I can't be sure. All I can assure you is that having a commoner as a lasting part of Pardon My Audacity, renowned fighter squadron will be seen with unkind eyes. Her Majesty possesses great power and authority, but not even her would be able to deny pressure for long without taking solid action. I understand, Wyatt replied, and truly he did. Envious nobles were nothing new to him. He'd seen plenty of it during his training years in the academy. If there was one thing that blue bloods hated more than anything, it was to be overshadowed or insulted by others, doubly so by any who they considered as inferior. I'll see what I can do, thank you, Gregor. Dismissed, the composter saluted again before breaking off. Following his schedule, he made his way to meet with Redford in his quarters. He would have sighed in dread anticipation for what the commander had in store for him were it not for Gregor's inquiry. Studying and practicing the filing of reports, getting to know more about the rules of engagement, the social norms between nobles, and other to his mind pointless little things he had to be aware of that didn't involve making himself into a proper officer was annoying at worst and confusing beyond comprehension at best. Apparently, he realized after his first proper lesson that being an officer was half about being an actual officer, and the other half was about social norms, proper conduct, and how to carry oneself amongst your peers, with the second half being more important for the vast majority of nobles. That alone threatened him with a nasty headache. By the time he made it to Redford's quarters, Wyatt didn't care if he'd spend the next 3 hours filling reports and checking for mistakes. Announcing himself, he was allowed entry, and soon he sat at the other side of Redford's desk. Is something bothering you, Wyatt? Redford asked without looking away from his data pad. Yes, Commander, Wyatt replied in a serious tone. One of my squad mates, Gregor Unge, brought his concern to light after our training ended. Go on, Redford said, putting the data pad down and turning to stare at Wyatt. Taking a deep, calming breath, Wyatt spoke, retelling a summary of his conversation with the rest of the composters. When he finished, he frowned slightly. Commander, I must know if Leopold is going to get replaced, or if there's a way for him to become a knight. It would be unfair for him to lose his position, more so after the significant progress we've made as a squadron. Redford, who up until now chose to remain silent, crossed his arms and hummed deeply, eyes narrowing in concentration. Warrant Officer Leopold Deer certainly has the skills and record of service to denote him as a worthy and capable pilot. Regardless, the fact remains that your other squad mates are correct in their fears. Clara would try to shield your squad as it is if you ask her. Perhaps you should. No, Wyatt replied, shaking his head slowly. I don't want to make things more difficult for her, not when there are other solutions available. Commander, could I buy him a title? Redford was stunned for a moment, then chuckled. You could do that, but it will cost you 20 million credits. Wyatt's face went pale at the absurd number, but it made sense why so few commoners were able to buy one in the first place. There are other options available to us, however, Redford continued, returning life to Wyatt's face. A noble of sufficient ranking could vouch for him or grant him a knighthood through bonds of servitude and loyalty, binding him to a house, similar to your initial situation but far simpler and straightforward. But that's something that can't be done lightly, right? He asked, already familiar enough to know there was a catch. There's always a catch. Nothing can be simple for blue bloods, can it? Wyatt thought as Redford nodded. You are correct, Wyatt. You're learning, the gray-haired man replied. Giving a commoner a knighthood comes with great responsibilities and risks. The actions of the knight reflect upon their lord or lady, and judgment will befall both for mistakes and dishonor committed. Not only that, but the approval of a knighthood befalls 3 separate nobles from 3 separate houses. Wyatt frowned at the third possible solution and quickly concluded that if he planned on ensuring Leopold's hard-earned position remained his, that was his only real option. I only need to find a noble willing to knight him, he muttered, his mind already working on the alternatives. He could ask Istel, but that sense of superiority clung to him like a thick mantle and he wasn't sure he'd do it. GT came to mind next, and he was fairly certain the red-haired man would do it, but he didn't know if that was a good idea now that the rest of the crew were less wary of him. Finally, he could ask Redford. The older man had admitted that Leopold was a skilled pilot, so perhaps he could do it. You could do that, Redford replied, his expression softening to one of levity, or you could knight him yourself. Wyatt blinked, stunned at the proposal. I could do it. Redford nodded. You're a baron now, Wyatt. You are the head of your house, House Staples. Dean Oakman, a noble, is your oath-bound knight. There's nothing stopping you from granting Leopold a knighthood. As your knight, he'd be your vassal, a noble in training, if you will. Of course, you'd be responsible for his safety and well-being while he serves you loyally, bound to your house. And if he were to establish his own house, they would be the vassals of House Staples too. Wyatt absorbed what the commander told him and quickly analyzed it. Whatever risks to his honor were irrelevant. The only thing he disliked was the servitude parts of the deal, but he'd find a solution if he gave Leopold a knighthood. But there was one glaring problem. He needed the approval of 3 other nobles from different houses. Tentatively, he asked, Commander, if I knight Leopold, will you approve of him? Your forwardness never ceases to amaze and appall me in equal measure, Wyatt, Redford replied. Are you sure you want to risk bringing dishonor to your house if Leopold were to do something shameful or dishonorable? If honor is all that is at risk, then I lose nothing of value, Wyatt answered without hesitation. Redford smiled. In that case, you have my approval. I'll give you the formal document at the end of today's shift. Might I suggest you ask Cynthia and GT for their approval? They lose nothing and their approval is as good as any. Wyatt bowed his head. Thank you, Commander. The commander nodded once. Now then, before we begin, I must tell you that you need a motto for your house. I suggest something short but impactful that reflects the ideal your house stands by, or an ideal to represent simple and powerful. You don't have to give me an answer now, think it over. There's no need to rush such an important step in the growth of your house, Lord Staples, Redford ended with a tiny smirk. A motto to reflect what I know, what my house stands for. Oh, by Julie, am I starting to think like a blue-blooded idiot? Wyatt thought with dread, but then shook his head, settling to read and work on the lesson Redford had in store for him. But try as he may, he couldn't stop thinking about Leopold or about what motto would be good. The former was a problem that, thankfully, could be solved with relative ease. He'd be lying if he said he wasn't fond of Leopold. Both were commoners, that was true, but aside from that, Leopold was genuinely a good man with a particular sense of humor. Then again, a certain princess and her blue-haired bodyguard had odd senses of humor themselves. The latter issue, however, was solved within the hour. There were so many things he could say, a carefully veiled insult, a dangerous threat, or perhaps a subtle remark. All of them were good options in his mind, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized none of those worked. Sure, it would amuse him in the short term, but he couldn't afford to be selfish, not with something that important. Nothing assured him that he would find a wife and have children of his own, but that was a possibility he couldn't neglect. He wasn't a stupid, foolish, glory-seeking, honor-hungry blue blood. It was his duty to ensure his children, and their children, and those who came after to remember that, no matter what others thought of them or his house. He had to ensure that. That's when a particular moment of pure defiance, insolence, and unreserved truth came to him. Yes, that would be his house's motto, his motto. Simple and powerful, a true representation of his most fundamental beliefs. He was sure of it, so much so that he smiled as he stood up, his time with the commander spent. Commander, I've decided what the motto of House Staples will be. Redford raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Such haste is almost indecent, Wyatt. Then again, I've come to expect such oddities from you. Tell me proudly and loudly the motto of your house. Wyatt's smile widened in satisfaction as his gaze hardened like steel. Then he obeyed the commander's order. Victory shall suffice. Nor avio Clara's quarters. Victory shall suffice, I approve of it. It has weight and power, Wyatt, Cynthia praised as she ran a brush through Clara's hair. I too find it charmingly fitting. Beware the wolfhound, for his bite will rend flesh from bone. Beware the white stag, for his antlers shall pierce through armor. Beware Baron Wyatt Staples, for he is both simultaneously, Clara said with a cheeky smile. Wyatt smiled from his usual seat, finishing chewing on a Vescom. Did you practice that, Clara? He asked, amused. I certainly did not, Clara countered, dignified. Don't let my unhinged princess lie to you, Wyatt. She rehearsed it over 24 times. Sometimes I wonder if theater or a filming set is her true place to be. Drama fuels her as much as her addiction to baked goods does, Cynthia countered, earning a bright blush from the blonde woman. Shush you, Clara countered immediately. You have a job to finish and focus on, maid of mine. Carry out your task and seal those lying lips. Wyatt shook his head, enjoying the interaction between his friends mightily. Looking around the room, a sense of peace filled his heart. Knitting equipment, yarn balls, and a series of data pads rested on the nearby table alongside their latest creations. A cat, apparently some sort of small domestic feline found within Aster territory made by Clara, an acceptable rendition of a Lakoa by his own hand, and something created by Cynthia. She said it was supposed to be an octopus, a tentacled marine creature. But while the thing had tentacles, the similarities ended there, even with his guidance. Then was Clara's trophy showcase, the model he got for Clara still there after what felt like a lifetime ago. Finally, the new addition to the princess's room, a sleeping Yanti sprawled on top of several cushions with a twitching leg up in the air. Wyatt wanted to laugh again. When he arrived, he saw Gino sleeping in that same spot and position. Of course, he asked what he was doing there, and Cynthia explained she had to drag him, and quite literally force him to sleep, because the rambunctious Yanti had been working almost non-stop for the past week on all manner of projects. "Can you believe he forgot to eat for 2 days?" Clara asked with amusement. "What's he doing exactly?" Wyatt asked, turning to the princess. "What isn't he doing is more precise. He's working on fighter schematics, data processing, trying to find out more about the builders of these black ships, trying to rebuild a non-combat capable version of Maximilian's fighter, running countless simulations and much, much more." Clara turned to gaze upon the sleeping Yanti and smile sweetly at him. "But it makes him happy, so very much so. We were fortunate to find such a technological savant." "What's a savant?" Wyatt asked. "An extremely gifted person in one or two fields of knowledge or arts," Cynthia replied. "The prince won't be happy that you were able to stumble across another great talent, and keep it for yourself, Clara. My brother dearest may weep at my victory. He is not the only one who seeks and hungers for those with talent and competent skills," Clara replied with a knowing, winning smirk. Cynthia merely rolled her eyes as she finished brushing her hair. "Come, we must bid our unwelcomed guests farewell." Wyatt obeyed and stood up. "What about Gino?" "He'll remain here. By the time we return, he'll sleep still. We need not worry about his safety," Clara answered as Cynthia and Wyatt took position at her sides. She was wearing a regal but tight-fitting purple dress that the heterochromatic-eyed man recognized to be very similar to the dress Felicity Center had worn in Bakura. The doors opened, and he followed her as 2 Royal Marines took point. Their arrival at the hangar was met with respectful silence and bowing heads. 4 shuttles were being loaded with prisoners taken from the Gallant Venture and the surviving 3 corvettes. Almost all of them were nobles, with only a few truly loyal commoners refusing to leave their masters behind or renounce the Duke's cause. Istolfenis was already present, waiting for the princess's arrival alongside an older man wearing a uniform and sporting a thick beard and mustache. Behind them and in chains was a disheveled Felicity Center, a defeated Javier Wand, and an emotionless Casimir Khan, guarded by 2 Marines each. Nearby, Captain Sarah Ortega and Maximilian User stood waiting. "Lord Istel, I thank you for the quick response sent by your house and for your magnanimous gesture of aid and support," Clara said in her practiced regal tone. "On the contrary, Princess, it is the least Fenties could do to repay you. Not only have you kept your word but have done so in a manner that will surely be written in the history books," Istel praised, then turned to the captured traitors. "House Forrest shall deliver the captives back to Duke Draymore unharmed and under the banner of neutrality as part of a diplomatic delegation. It will be up to him to dispose of them as he pleases. I'm certain that he will not be kind or merciful." "No, he will not," Clara agreed, earning a glare from the black-haired woman. Her broken nose brought a smile to the princess's lips, and she stepped forth to the point where she was mere inches apart from Felicity. "It is a shame, really. Had you managed to control your reckless emotions, you would have found yourself with a small victory instead of a crushing defeat, Felicity," she sighed dejectedly. "To think I even considered you a worthy rival at one point. So disappointed." Felicity snarled in anger, but the Marines were holding her tightly. Then Clara's eyes turned colder than ice as she stared into Felicity's eyes. "Do not forget to give my uncle my message, Center." With that, she stepped back and gave Casimir and Javier a single glance before turning to Cyro as the trio were taken away into a shuttle. "Captain, it is my sincerest hope that we don't face each other in combat again. The Principality needs men who understand honor such as you." "I'm humbled, my princess," Cyro replied, bowing his head slowly and respectfully. "However, as you depart now, may I ask?" "Ask a favor of you," Clara asked gently. "My princess need only ask for it to be done," Cyro replied. "I need you to give this to my uncle," she said, presenting the man with a small rectangular object. "Can I trust you to deliver a simple, ordinary letter, Captain?" "It shall be done, my princess. For proud is the red feather," Cyro replied, concealing the letter in his uniform. Clara gifted him a smile before moving to meet with Maximilian. I wish you a good venture and prosperity, roaring thunder. Oh, Maximilian said, surprised. No last-ditch effort to try and change my mind. Clara shook her head. You've said your piece and made peace with yourself. Nothing I can offer will change that. You are free to go as you are free to stay, then go I shall. Maximilian nodded, his breathing much clearer, but he would need to wear his respirator for at least another week before he could safely take it off. Thank you for your hospitality, Princess. May you yet live to see the end of this conflict with you as the victor, I hope, he declared before glancing at Wyatt, giving him a firm nod. I will try to follow his career closely. I will keep you informed, Clara replied before the tall, muscular man walked away. Maximilian, if I may, what do you intend to do now? Maximilian stopped and turned his head to look at her. I'll deliver little Sen to safety, then I'll go back to my homeworld and try to do something with my life. Whatever lies ahead of me, I will delight in wine, he said, then continued on his way. The blue-eyed man turned once more as he was about to board the shuttle where Casimir waited for him and stared directly at Wyatt. Good luck, Wolfhound, surpass me, he called with a laugh, followed by a coughing fit, but no regrets existed. Clara turned to the man standing next to Istel as the shuttles closed. Captain John Linter, she greeted. My princess, the man said. I've been dispatched with the additional crew to return 3 vessels, the Gallant Venture, the Glorious Reclamation, and Cato's Finest, back to Macha and deliver them unto His Majesty the Prince. I thank Lord Shackfens for his cooperation on behalf of House Linter. I thank you, Lord Istel. Our pleasure, Lord Jun, Istel replied. No more words were spoken as Wyatt watched the shuttles close and begin preparations for departure, exiting the hangar. He smiled. Duke Draymore would be defeated, he promised that.